touch, we break. Make it seem like we feel the same. We love what we hate. We lie, but we know we can't water what doesn't grow. Give up, let it go. Well, we fell apart just in time. You say at least it was worth the try.
This is Sarah Rose, and you are watching My Octopus Painting, a watercolor introduction. Catch more at theregoessararose.com. Grab your watercolor paper and let's prep it. Yes, watercolor paper does stretch, so you're going to want to soak it in water beforehand. Tape it down, and that way no peaks or valleys occur. Why this is so important for watercolor is because your watercolor paint may flow into those valleys and ruin your painting. So I flipped my paper back and forth several times, about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I taped the edges. Notice I taped it to the paper itself. I dabbed off some of the excess water, and then I taped the tape down to the table. The reason why this is so important is because tape does not like to really stick to wet paper, so that double layer of tape will help. This is not a perfect job. This is just what I did for my painting. We are painting wet on wet, so I grabbed my supplies, got myself ready. I'm using this large watercolor brush, any will do, and I'm going to get myself a clean small plate. White really helps since you're going to be working with color. The paint I'm using today is QOR by Golden. This is a light fast and intense watercolor paint. Now that I have my paints that are not going to fade in the sun once I'm done here today, I'm going to get myself ready and just slap that paint down. Today I'm using salt water for this entire painting. Now, you see here that I keep adding paint with spaces in between to see how the paint is going to react to each other. It's going to flow. What is it going to do? Where is it going to go? Let it have a mind of its own. Watercolor does, trust me. If you're having trouble splattering, an old toothbrush works great. And this just adds some texture. The majority of our details are going to be in the octopus face near the end of the painting when our paper is mainly dry. Now, I am going to add some texture as we go along to the center, but you'll see me do that with very, very light layers. Adding more and more texture to the rock and the octopus at the same time at this time is great because many times in real life, this wonderful little mollusk will actually try to match its surroundings in texture. I got some coarse and fine grained salt and a much smaller paintbrush and got ready to start on the details of our octopus face. Here we have all kinds of different shapes going in different directions because their skin around their face and their body can balloon and shrink in all different ways. So we want to include the details of those wrinkles as well as the current look of our octopus. Now, mind you, I did start adding an interesting mix of two different blues here, which I will list on the screen, but you choose whatever colors you want at the end of the day. Adding color to these areas and just letting it be in these corners make it move outward in interesting ways and kind of mimic an octopus suckers, which is pretty cool. It allowed me to not do a lot of work and get the idea across that what we have here is an octopus. Working on these pieces over here, back and forth in between the details of the face, allow different areas to dry, and that is so crucial in watercolor because if you put everything down when your paper is wet, it will bleed together. If you put everything down when your paper is dry, it will have a lot of details. I wanted a painting that had a mix of both, with more details as we got closer to the center of the octopus. Mind you, I did go and add a little bit more detail here and there as we got closer to the octopus face, because this could indicate that this tentacle might be a little further out of the den and in a bit more sunlight than the rest of the tentacles down below. Now that I've moved up into the upper part of the face, I'm having a lot of fun with moving my paintbrush in completely different directions and angles to mimic some of that different type of skin. But here you see me adding some really dark color, which, oh my goodness, yes, it's a watercolor and she added dark. What is she doing? Well, what I did, I don't use black. You're mixing dioxazine purple here with burnt sienna, which are two colors kind of found in nature. However, with this intense dark color, you're mimicking black without it actually being black. So what's cool is I've added some really cool contrast between some of the colors. Now, that's interesting because we can use some of that darkness to bring up into the rocks and add some more texture. Not a ton because our paper's still wet and it will bleed, but it looks really cool. In fact, I think I was kind of getting some ideas for some more bleeding watercolor paints at this point, but you'll see what I do in the future. Because again, this is my first big watercolor. I'm trying to make it spread right. It's not working, so I go, hey, I'm working with watercolors. Let's add water. What an idea. I am going to do some more fun stuff to that area, but we'll get to that in just a minute. Yeah, I tried using my fingers with watercolor, so that's interesting. But if you notice, when you go back and add paint over watercolor when it's kind of dried, it begins to create layers like a digital painting over here. Now, what's interesting is I am kind of outlining my octopus because I didn't really draw it here, and I'm using some of that excess paint to fill in some areas, create some texture in a fun, messy way, because I was just planning on painting whatever I did today and finishing it, just stopping and appreciating the work that I did. This is where I got creative, and I brought back my spray bottle and made the paint bleed upwards, and it created shadows in the rocks that look 3D. So I didn't do it, the water bottle did it. Now that we're adding some texture to the octopus, I'm realizing that some of the layers in the octopus are in the veins, in the separation of the little bumps in the colors, because an octopus doesn't always actually create the texture that they're trying to mimic, they just change their colors. So I decided to go back and add layers. And I'm adding lots of different colored layers on the octopus face while it's drying. Some spread, some didn't. Some was dirty paint, water, some was actually paint. Now, I kept using a little bit too much paint to try to fix this area over here, and you can remove excess paint or water from your painting. I used a Q-tip. I rolled it across the water. I didn't rub it so it didn't create a nap in my paper and lose any texture. Now, at this point, I do start working on the eyes somewhat, but in very, very, very light layers. Because again, this mollusk is mainly water, and its little globy eyes sure are a lot of clear jelly looking something like water. So now that I'm going into more of the detail of this octopus, I am referencing the photo that I have to the side a bit more, and you are welcome to reference photos as well, but for copyright purposes, never copy one. So just like your painting, you're gonna make one that's just all your own. Now that we are getting farther, I'm realizing that I want more darkness and shadow on this side of the painting to match what matches in my photo, and a little bit more shading, because I'm going to get to a point of just filling in some light colored veins everywhere and leaving the open spaces in between to look like they're popping out of the skin. You'll see what I mean in a minute. The eyes I kind of need to let dry a little bit more before I add detail, and I'm getting a bit impatient, but it was fun painting, that I gotta tell you. So here we go and start to add some of that darkness in the pupil, because what this needed at this point to help me with was know where my eyes are going to sit. And again, I didn't draw this out first. You can. That would probably be a much more intelligent thing to do. But I just wanted to have fun to show that we could just do this from scratch. You can too. So once you have your outline for the eyes, I would highly encourage you to walk away and leave it alone until it dries. But keep your white areas as white as long as you can. You can always add paint later, but it's so hard to lift off once you've added it. So going along in looking at some of the outer edges, I realized I'm going to leave my octopus alone and add some texture. So this little octopus is not trying to be a diva and take over the painting, so it's not going to be a ton of texture. I'm moving my paintbrush around in various ways and just kind of letting the paint slip off, I guess you would call it, and create little tiny bits of texture on the top. But as you notice, our main center of attraction is my octopus. So we left it with a bare amount of details and went right back to the center of our painting. The cool thing about these octopus eyes is that they just have a lot of tiny red dots that kind of radiate from the center outwards. But please remember, again, there's like an outer globe around the eyes that's just this clear stuff. Shading is so important in watercolor, and the way to best understand that is to let the paper speak for itself. The paper is a medium, the paper is a space, and the paper is going to give you lightness. So leave yourself that outer layer to make your octopus look like it's catching the bare hint of sunlight from above them. Right here, the way that I added some shadow to the top of my octopus is I did overlay some paint a little bit at the top, but it is not the exact same dark color from above. So it does give a little bit of lightness. And here we're adding, honestly, more dirty paint on more odd mixed colors. But I moved my paintbrush side to side, so it gave it lots of different texture again. You do want to give yourself an outline again for these eyes, because I didn't want to accidentally make the eyes too small, take up too much space. Now, I will admit that the left eye, I made the mistake of probably making it too dark. I wish I would have kind of left it a few minutes ago where it was. But you know what? Live and learn. And I was so happy with the end result regardless. Now, the good thing about a watercolor painting is the finest little bit of water will do, especially if you just want to spread paint around. So at this point, I literally just got some water and dragged it from up above, that interesting blue color I chose. And the octopus in the center could use a bit more darkness and texture, so I just let some color bleed. I did nothing else. This is my finished product, and I wish you the best of luck on yours. Don't forget to subscribe for updates, or like this video if you had a great time with the rest of us. If you are interested in quality reprints for your home or office, please check the link below to purchase Octopoda by Sara Rose. Until our next adventure, friends, there goes Sara Rose.